talking about information processing. I'm Alicia Patrick, and I'm the one who you're hearing. And I always like to put a face with a name, so that's me. Yeehaw! Let's get started. First off, we need to talk about what information processing is. Information processing is the human's mind's activity of taking in, storing, and using information. Can you ever remember a time where you were sitting in a classroom and your teacher was talking to you and you thought, hey, I'm never going to use this stuff. I don't know why we're learning it. Well, basically, there are moments in time where, yeah, you might not use that information, but there are a lot of times where you will learn information and store it, and it will become useful at a later date. But for just general purposes, information processing, we can look at this student here learning off of their laptop as a virtual learner, and they are gaining knowledge, and they will store that knowledge in their brain, and then hopefully use that knowledge that they've gained and apply it towards, maybe a college graduation or a master's degree. Hopefully that's me soon. Moving on. In information processing, there are 3 types of memory. You have sensory memory, working memory, and cognitive load. Sensory memory. Do you see the Latin root word in the first word? I do. Sense. What are your senses? Come on, you've been learning this since kindergarten. Sensory memory, well, the fancy definition of sensory memory is the initial processing that transforms these incoming stimuli into information so we can make sense of them. Other names for sensory memory are sensory buffer, iconic memory for images, and echoic memory for sounds. Basically, all that's saying, it's a smell, a taste, a sound, a feeling, or a sight that we can identify with, or that we will be able to label in our minds to be identified together once we've experienced it. For example, that little guy down there in your left-hand corner, he is sniffing a really pretty flower, and I don't know about you all, if you have allergies or not, but I know that in springtime I can smell certain smells in the air, and I can relate that to my sensory memory because I know that I'm going to sneeze my head off, so I can relate back to that memory. Also, when you eat certain foods, you know what it's going to taste like because of your memory, and if you haven't ate that food yet, you will create a sensory memory once you've experienced that new food, whether it be salty peanuts or the mushiness of an avocado or, the crunchiness of potato chips. You'll be able to store that in your sensory memory. When you hear your dog barking late at night about to jump through the front window, it's probably a good idea if you go and get out of bed and check and see what's out there. And you need to store that in your memory for your senses that, there could be something wrong and you need to pay attention to it. That's the worst thing ever. I don't know if you've ever experienced that or not, but when your dogs wake you up in the middle of the night just barking their heads off, it's just an instant adrenaline rush, but that's a sensory memory that you can relate back to, and it's not very fun. Anyway, also for feeling, if you stick your hand under running water, you should by now know that you are going to get wet. Or if you jump into a swimming pool, the sense of the water on your skin, that is a memory of, becoming wet. Or, maybe you fall down and you land your elbow on the pavement. That sensory memory, you will create the memory of pain and ouch and your bone cracking against the pavement. Hopefully that doesn't happen to anybody anytime soon. And last but not least, sight. We create memories a lot through our two eyeballs. A lot of things that we see, we remember, and that's what can be stored in your sensory memory just through sight. All of your senses put together, smell, taste, hearing, feeling, and sight, those are what go towards making, storing information in your sensory memory bank. I want you guys to really start paying attention to your senses. Think about that connection between your senses and things that you remember. All right, moving on to our second memory type of working memory. Working memory, the fancy definition is the workbench of the memory system, the interface where new information is held temporarily and combined with knowledge from long-term memory to solve problems or comprehend a lecture. The way I like to look at it is working memory is like a 3-ring binder that temporarily keeps up with this new information. And you also, in your working memory, have access to your long-term memory binder. So I'm a visual learner, so I had to create this diagram that, over on the left-hand side, that's your big long-term memory binder. And that's a lot of stuff that we've remembered since we were born. But with our working memory, if we're learning new stuff, we've got to have something to hold on to in our mind, metaphorically speaking. So when we have the working memory on the right-hand side, that's our new information. We're able to combine those in our brain to create new memories and store new information, and we'll be able to access that, at a later time. Working memory can be, it's something that we use every day. It's something that I use when I'm going through this, technology program, that I'm having to relate back to when I was in my undergrad at Radford. That was 5 years ago, and it can be difficult when you have to dig really deep into your long-term memory to make those connections, but it's really neat to kind of see it being put into action because it is still there, and I'm learning new information. I'm able to make those connections, and the proof of that is being able to complete this assignment. So really, the working memory, I think I'm personally the most impressed by it because you are able to see, the new information and your old information working together. Anyways, I could go on for days about it. Let's talk about the third memory. The third type of memory is your cognitive load. And what does a cognitive load mean? Basically, if you think of a big load, you're going to have, like if you leave the grocery store with a big load, you've got a buggy full. Or it could be, if you've got a small load, you're just walking out with one bag. Well, a cognitive load is how many resources it takes you to complete a task. There's 3 different types of cognitive loads, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But a cognitive load, basically, it's what the person already knows about the task and what supports are available. I find this one the most difficult one to understand, but next week we will go more in depth on cognitive load on the 3 different types. But basically, this is just, cognitive load is what you have to go through in order to mentally go through in order to complete a task. And the 3 types of cognitive load are the intrinsic cognitive load, and those are unavoidable. The extraneous cognitive load, and these get in the way. And lastly, you have the germane cognitive load, and these are valuable. And like I said, again, we will go through those again more in depth next week on our cognitive load lecture. Thank you for tuning in to the 3 types of memory for information processing, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.